You've probably noticed that in Lightburn, when you click an object or select it, you get some dashed lines. You may or may not have noticed that some objects have just dashed lines, but some objects, when you click them, have dashes and dots. In this video, we're going to talk about why that is, what caused the difference between dashed lines and dashes and dots, and more importantly, what the implications are for various operations in Lightburn. So the idea of showing that an object is selected by having dashed lines, which is often called the marching ants, goes back to the early days of personal computers. The very first Macs had this feature, and it was called marching ants. Since then, a lot of programs have had those marching ants. Photoshop has had it almost as long as Photoshop has been around. Interestingly enough, there's some programs like Adobe Illustrator and Inkscape that don't have the marching ants. But fortunately for us, in Lightburn it does, because it really makes it easy if we click on something to see that it's been selected. But why is it that sometimes when we select an object, it just has simple dashed lines, and sometimes when we click on an object, it has dashes and dots? So two different types of marching ants. Well, the answer to that is simple. If an object is not grouped and it's selected, then we just get simple dashed lines. If an object is grouped, so we click on the circle, we can see actually these two circles are grouped, then we have dashes and dots. Now, that seems like a small thing, but it has some important implications. So, for example, some of our Boolean operations, that is, if we select a couple objects and we want to do some sort of a Boolean thing, we'll use our Boolean assistant here, and we want to union those or make the intersection or subtract one for the other, like that, those are going to work fine if one object is grouped and one isn't. However, if both of those objects were grouped together, we'll just group them real quickly here. Be helpful if I selected them before I try to group them. Both these guys are grouped, and we can do that by right-clicking, or we can go up and hit the little group icon here, or Control G or Command G. In any case, so if these are grouped, and now we select them again and go back to do those same operations, so we'll go up to our, and we see all the Boolean tools are grayed out, and that's because we can't use those on two objects if both those objects are grouped together. So the solution is we simply click on them. We can ungroup by just right-clicking and doing ungroup. Now they're no longer grouped, and our Boolean tools are available. So we can get to them from over here, or we can get to them from up here. So that's one situation where having the objects ungrouped is helpful. Another one is the node editing tool. Node editing tool is a very powerful tool in Lightburn. So if we select an object and then we go over to node editor, and we can see our nodes right here, and we can easily edit this object. So I could delete one node, turn it into a triangle. I can grab one side, stretch it out, do different things with it. So we're not going to go into node editing today, but the node editing tool is very powerful, and once you learn to use it, you'll probably come to it again and again. However, what we find is sometimes when we go to use the node editor, so let's say we select this circle, now we go over to the node editor, we click on it, but we don't see any nodes on our circle here. And why is that? Because we can see the type of marching ants we have, dashes and dots. And let me kind of zoom in here, maybe it'll make it a little bit easier to see. You can see it's dashes and dots, and the node editor doesn't work in that case. So we would think all we have to do then is go back to our selection tool, select those, we can right-click to ungroup, go to ungroup, we can see this circle and this one are no longer grouped together because this just has the simple marching ants, but for some reason this circle is grouped still. Now this is a situation that arises often when you're getting files from the internet. So let's say you buy a file on Etsy or you download a free SVG someplace, something like that. Somebody sends you a file that you want to use on your laser, and you go to do some node editing and you can't do that. Well, the first thing to check is if it's grouped. Now we thought we ungrouped this, but we can see based on the dashes and dots that it is still grouped. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of exploring here to see why that is. And in this case, if we were to zoom way in, we would see there's a weird little artifact down here that's causing that this is grouped together with that. And so that's why this is still grouped and we can't use our node editor. So the way to get rid of that is we're going to have to ungroup these. So I right click, hit ungrouped. Now we see that this is dashed lines here. We can select this guy, delete it. Now our large circle, if we select it again, it has the simple marching ants, so we can go over to our node editor, we select our node editor, and now we see the nodes are visible. So we can do different operations on that circle. So you can see sometimes when you're frustrated by your Boolean operations aren't working, they're grayed out, or if you're trying to do any sort of node editing, the problem might be that your object is grouped. And it may not always be obvious what it's grouped with, so sometimes it takes a little bit of exploring to do that. In a future video, I'll go through how we have nested groups that can throw you off a little bit as well. But in all those cases, if an object is not grouped, you'll just have the standard marching ants. So I hope this has cleared up some mysteries for some of you and you found it helpful. Feel free to leave comments or questions in the comment section there. And if you have found this helpful, you think others would benefit from it, then please leave a link to this video in your typical social media sites, your favorite social media forums.